Hello and welcome to my channel. This is a new comic book review. This is the cover to Strange Tales issue 110. The issue released April 9th, 1963 with a cover date of July 1st, 1963. This is the 64th issue to read in a Marvel comic reading order. This comic is Doctor Strange's first appearance, even though the cover is only showing the Human Torch facing a supervillain team-up. One of the earliest Marvel team-ups for Marvel, this issue is definitely more well-known for being the first appearance of Stephen Strange. The first story in here is titled The Human Torch vs. the Wizard and Paste Pot Pete. Yeah, the title sure tells you what you get. It was written by Stan Lee and Ernie Hart, penciled and inked by Dick Ayers, and colorist was Stan Goldberg. Stan did the colors in the whole issue, and I'm pretty sure this is the 26th appearance of the Johnny Storm Human Torch in comics. The story starts with the Human Torch procrastinating his schoolwork by looking back at his last battles against Paste Pot Pete and the Wizard. And we also see the Human Torch use an obstacle course to work on his flight, which is cool. I never really thought that the Torch could use an obstacle course while on fire, but it makes sense, and I feel I should explain some things. The Strange Tales issues, starting in Strange Tales issue 101, going until issue 134, the Human Torch, Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four, had a solo series apart from the mainline Fantastic Four comic. Sometimes there was a crossover with a member, but usually Johnny just fought brand new villains while going to his high school. Sometimes the villains would become big mainstays like in today's story. With Paste Pot Pete, he starts his new plan to defeat the Human Torch to get revenge on him. He watches the prison the Wizard is held in for days until he can break in and free him. Paste Pot Pete's gun can do something I forgot about. He can reverse the suction on his paste gun to make it kind of like a rope. I want to add, this is Paste Pot Pete's second appearance and the Wizard's third appearance in the Marvel Universe. Now, the Wizard comes up with the plan to frame the Human Torch for crimes he commits, and it actually only works halfway. The most interesting thing about this story is that part. The police, the rest of the FF, and most of the public believe the Human Torch is innocent, but the Human Torch's classmates don't, saying he's only not in jail because his family's the famous Fantastic Four. Also, when escaping to jail, the Wizard says to go to his house. No one will think to look for him there. Like, what? Wouldn't that be the first place they'd look? Anyway, Paste Pot Pete's place would have been better to hide in, I think, since Pete just got back into the States. His residence probably wouldn't even be easy to track down. I want to talk more about Paste Pot Pete. I really like reading this character. He's funny, and the writers know that. I mean, it's just plain glue. Regular paste he uses as a weapon, and I guess throwing paste all over a windshield would cause the driver trouble, and he perfectly fires his gun, hitting his targets exactly. I just wanted to point out the hilarity of this character sometimes. If you laugh at the story, it makes it 100 times better. Okay, I know a lot of you look at these panels and think it's really odd because Wizard isn't in his pink metal suit that has him fly, and I'm calling Trapster Paste Pot Pete. Before these two appeared in the mainline Fantastic Four comics, the Rogues were in this comic, Strange Tales, and just fought the Human Torch exclusively. I really love how the Human Torch just lets the Wizard frame him for the crimes so that he can eventually smoke the Rogue out. It shows he's willing to take a hit to his publicity for the greater good. Yeah, most of the time Johnny is a hothead, but the more he does his superhero thing, the more he grows, and this is just one example. So how does he trap the Wizard and Paste Pot Pete? Well, he disguises himself and makes up a story about a rich man coming into town, and the Wizard shows up dressed as the Human Torch, and the Human Torch pretends that, oh, the heat is too much for me, I'll give you what you want. Then he himself turns into flame, and the two villains run away. I actually find this scene funny. When the Human Torch chases the two back to the Wizard's house, a trapdoor opens up underneath the Torch. Since he can fly, it doesn't work until the Wizard activates a wind jet above him to force him down. That one was actually pretty smart, although really, Johnny, this is the third time you have faced the Wizard at his house, which is filled with contraptions and weapons to fight you everywhere, and you still fall for it. This is the third and last appearance, actually, of the Wizard's house. I guess after this story, the city destroyed it or something. The Human Torch is dropped into a chamber full of unbreakable mirrors on each side to confuse him. He keeps flying into the walls, and the two rogues have a plan to suffocate him to death in there. The Human Torch escapes by making a flame mirage of himself so he can burn his way through a piece of the mirror, and he pops up behind them after he intensifies his heat so much that he can tunnel through the ground and get out of there. When he pops up behind the two villains, he just throws a ring of fire around them to capture them. I wish the rogues didn't go down so easily like that, especially when there could have been a cool fight scene here, and they would have had room if they removed the 3 pages of the backstory at the start of the comic. I expected something like the opening to the story to happen in the issue, the Wizard and Pete firing at the torch in the mirror trap, with Johnny not knowing where the attacks were coming from. I had a lot to say on this, even though I think the story isn't a really good one, especially not a good supervillain team-up moment. It really does just go through the motions. I mean, to even have the villains arguing with each other the whole time, come on. The final story I will talk about is the most important story under the cover, Doctor Strange, Master of Black Magic. The story was written by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, penciled and inked by Steve Ditko. Many already noticed, but Doctor Strange was unarguably mostly the creation of Steve Ditko. The story opens with a man having nightmares every night, and so he goes to a mysterious man who he's heard takes care of these problems, a doctor, Doctor Strange. He agrees to help and will go into the man's dream the next night. Apparently the public already knows about Doctor Strange, and now he supposedly has special powers. When Doctor Strange goes into the man's dream, projecting himself there in his astral form, or as they call it here, metaphysical form, he encounters a supervillain Nightmare. He is encased completely in the shadows, and he rides a horse and, well, controls the dimension of dreams. Yes, this story is not only the first appearance of Strange, but also the rogue Nightmare. Doctor Strange even calls Nightmare his ancient foe. Yeah, Nightmare's famous horse Dreamstalker is in here too, although the horse is not named yet. In the story, Doctor Strange is wearing the Amulet of Agamotto, which should not be confused with the Eye of Agamotto. That item comes later. Now, the Ancient One uses the amulet to blind and freeze the man who asked for Doctor Strange's help. The man was going to kill Doctor Strange, shooting him in his trance, I guess you could call it, because he discovered his dark secret while in his dream, so the Ancient One did have an action to play in the story. Thanks to his master, Doctor Strange leaves the dream dimension after figuring out what's wrong with the man, and then possesses his body again. It turned out the man betrayed his previous partners for money, and deep down he is haunted by it, so he has to make things right to sleep well again. That is the end of the story. The Ancient One is not called that in the story, only referred to as Master. The story also doesn't have Doctor Strange's origin story. His assistant Wong is also not mentioned by name, but he's here. Unfortunately, right now, I don't have a lot of Doctor Strange knowledge compared to other Marvel heroes, so that's all I got to talk about when it comes to this little story. It's Steve Ditko's art. I really like it here. Even with his first time drawing Doctor Strange, I think his art fits Doctor Strange a lot more than his Spider-Man art. Alright, the Trapster and the Wizard, half of the Frightful Four, the 2 most prominent members of the future supervillain team. Each rogue would appear 2 more times before they teamed up for that story. With 2020 Vision, it's crazy how the cover says nothing about Doctor Strange's first appearing here, since he's still around today decades later. One thing I'm left with is each story is a little take on an old cliche. I already talked about how the first one had a supervillain teaming up and failing because of them arguing with each other, and the other one being a man haunted by the wrongs of his past and needing to remedy them to fix things. And those are my thoughts on Strange Tales issue 110. I thank you for watching.